Hey there, my yogi friend. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Gomukhasana pose or cow face pose. And this pose can be quite intense for a lot of us. So I'm going to cover some tips and some variations and tons of modifications so that hopefully you can find a version that works for you and your body. So let's get started with how this pose is done traditionally. So you'll start off with one knee stacked on top of the other like I have here, and traditionally you'll also add in an arm bind. So you'll take the left arm behind you when you have the left knee stacked on top, and the right arm up and over, clasping your hands behind you. And so you get a shoulder stretch and definitely an outer hip stretch. You have a lot of internal rotation here of the hips. So this is one of the reasons this pose can be pretty intense for a lot of people, because we tend to be really tight in the hips, especially if you live the kind of lifestyle where you're sitting a lot and you're not really getting that much movement in your hip area. So let's make this pose simpler to begin with. I'm going to start off with the least intense variations for this pose, and then we'll move up, we'll talk about some variations, and hopefully, like I said, find something that works for you. So first of all, let's start off by extending the legs. And so most of us should be able to extend the legs here. If you have sensitive knees, you might roll up a blanket or bring a pillow underneath your knees. So just giving them a little bit less extension. And then from here, let's bend the left leg. So this can already feel like quite a lot. You might start off here and just see how that outer hip feels. Next stage would be to cross that foot over your right. So you're getting that internal rotation of the hip. This might start to feel a little bit more intense. You should start to be able to feel it on the outer hip here. And this might be enough for you here. From here, you can take that knee and stack it on top of your bottom knee, taking the heel in towards your right hip. So if you're trying this out at home and you're already screaming, and this feels impossible to do, then take that foot back a little bit. Maybe you walk it out a little bit towards your right, and that's perfectly fine. If that left heel doesn't go quite all the way to the right hip, that's totally fine. If you have this gap in between your bottom knee and top knee, you might place a pillow in between there, or a block, anything to sort of close that gap. And alternatively, you might sit up on top of a block. And I'm going to talk about that variation in a moment, but I'm just going to keep going here since I have the leg crossed already. So if you can take that left heel in all the way towards your hip and the left knee stacks on top of your right, from here we have a lot of options to fold forward. If we're doing this in a vinyasa practice or any kind of yang style of yoga, you want to make sure that the spine stays lengthened to protect your lower back. So if you have a lot of rounding in your upper back here, you're going to definitely want to sit up on top of a block or take one of the previous variations. And you can definitely just stay upright. You don't have to fold forward at all. So as long as you're feeling something in that outer hip, then you are doing this pose right. That's mainly where you should be feeling it. Now, if you feel okay with this and you feel okay with folding forward here, you might bend your right knee and take your right heel in towards your left hip. So now I have both knees bent, both heels in towards my hips. And this could start to feel really intense for a lot of you at home. So if you have the bottom knee floating off the ground here, you might also support it with a pillow or a block or anything that you have. Blanket will work. You may also find that you have a gap in between your bottom knee and top knee, and there it's also okay to place something in between. Now, in general, for any of these variations, you may want to play around with sitting on top of something. And this can make this pose a lot more accessible for a lot of you. Now, if you're on top of the block, you might want to stay upright here. This could already be enough for you and no need to add in any forward bending. But if this feels accessible to you, then you might walk your hands forward, coming onto your hands or coming onto your forearms, whatever is available. If you're doing a vinyasa practice, I would recommend try to keep the spine lengthened. But in a yin style practice where we're not engaging the muscles, you can fold forward with a rounded back, and that's actually ideal. So here we may use a couple of other blocks to help us out. So you might place the blocks down underneath your forearms or your hands, and you can play around with the height. So it really just depends on that rounding in your upper back and wherever is your limit. And then you might support your head with a block here as well. And you can also do this in any of the previous variations. So if you have that leg extended and you're folding forward, you can certainly prop up a couple blocks even and rest your forehead there. And that could be the variation that feels right for you. So you'll have to play around with it a little bit and see what your body is telling you is okay. Now there's another way to get into this pose because some people find it difficult to kind of take the leg, swing it over, and then press back and bring the other leg underneath it. So if that's the case for you, you can take this pose from a tabletop. So you'll come here, and then you'll take one leg, so maybe the right behind the left, and then from here you can come down onto a seat. And so that tends to be a more accessible way to get into this pose. And then once we're here, we can take all sorts of variations. So one variation might be to twist towards the top leg. And so I would just take I have my left knee on top of my right, so I'm going to take my right hand to that knee, twist to my left, bringing my left hand behind. And from here, I might intensify this and come down onto my hands off to my side or onto the forearms, maybe hooking your right elbow outside of that front thigh. And once again, if I'm in a yin practice here, it's okay to let the back round, and I might support my forehead with a block. And so this could end up being the shape that I take. Now, we have tons of other variations. So coming back upright, I can take some side bends here, all while still getting the stretch through the outer hip. However, traditionally, this is accompanied with an arm bind. So to take the bind, I'm going to bend the elbow of the hand that is on the same side of the bent knee. So right now my left knee is bent, so I'm going to bend the elbow, take it behind my back, reach my right arm up, and then interlace my hands behind me. So I'm going to turn around so you can see what that looks like from behind. And this can be quite intense for a lot of you back home, and maybe you even feel that there's a gap in between your hands, so you'll be like, I can't quite reach there with my fingers. So you can take a strap into your hands and close that gap with a strap. Or if you don't have a strap, then just a simple rag or scarf or anything like that will do. And with this bind, you can also do some folding forward. So that's perfectly fine as well. It's definitely one of the variations you can take. And the last thing I want to mention is that you can take this pose on your back. And this can also be a less intense pose. So whether you're doing this in the vinyasa or yin practice, if you come onto your back, draw your knees into your chest. And then we'll stack the right knee on top of the left this time. And this could be enough right here. You might bring your hands to your knees and just draw them in towards your chest. Or you can take your hands to your ankles or the outer edges of your feet, whatever is available. And then draw your heels in towards your glutes. And then release your feet, uncross your legs, and make your way up. So those are just a few variations and modifications that you can make whenever this pose is called for in a class. In my classes, I usually offer this pose in stages, so starting at an earlier stage that's less intense and moving to some of the more challenging stages. Of course, it's difficult in a yoga class to offer every single modification, so I hope that with this video you've been able to find a variation that works for you. And it might take some playing around to see what your body likes, and it also might change over time. So keep in mind that your body is constantly changing, and you should stay present to whatever that experience is inside your body and notice how that changes. So I hope this has been helpful. Also, please feel free to let me know if you have any other poses that you're looking for modifications for or some tips on, and I would be happy to add that to my list of classes that are coming up on my channel. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. This really means a lot to me. It helps me to keep putting out these videos for you. If you haven't yet subscribed and you're inspired to, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. This really helps me to put this out for you. So thanks again, and enjoy your day and have a great yoga practice. Namaste, my yogi friend.